So the sitting bones, so the ischial tuberosity, tuberosity comes from tuber, right? So it's like a root vegetable. So it's like you're on some sweet potatoes there or some carrots, and they're from the earth. So we think about sitting in this way and really grounding into the earth. And they're sometimes also called the heel of the pelvis, the heel of the pelvis. So, in the same way that when we stand and we ground the heel of the feet, um, and we have that even standing and we line up over our feet like that, when we're sitting in sitting postures, we have the heel of the pelvis and we're stacked over the heel of the pelvis. So if you have any tightness in your hamstrings, of course, or your hips or your low back, you have extreme tightness there, you might find that you have to have your hands behind to line up and over the heels of your sitting bones. Mhm. Um, and then once you feel that, and you can feel that the stacking there, close your eyes down and just take a few rounds of breath, somewhere between 6 and 10, to dive inward a bit and see if there's anything. I'm really appreciative, Mary Lou, that you brought up your situation this morning, because it's really an obvious situation sometimes of not wanting to look at what is in some way unattractive to us, whether that's outside of us in our immediate um, vicinity or inside of us, things we just resist against. So whether there's something that's sort of been a long term with you, or something that's just sort of surfacing this morning, can you just take a little bit of a deep dive and ask yourself, is there something that I continue to resist, that I just don't want to be with? And there are lots of ways that we can practice shifting that. One of my teachers, Tara Brock, I speak about her a lot. She has the habit of just placing a hand on her heart area, heart center, and just using some language around, it's okay, this belongs. So we use practice today. We use the portal of playing in the body to increase body intelligence, but also to peel away and sweep away areas that maybe we're holding some other tension around, emotional um, state, or a belief, or something we really hold strongly to and we can't flex it all. We use this practice to unveil some of these things and really brush off the surface to really reveal our own hidden or beautiful light that sometimes we obscure. So, on your own time, when you're ready, you can blink open your eyes and make transition to your back. Have your two blocks nearby, have your strap nearby, and just begin by reaching the legs long like you are in Tadasana. Bring the toes back towards your shins and feel now for the even standing posture here. So pressing through your heels. You could take your hands to the front of your pelvis and feel those bony ASIS, anterior superior iliac, the spine. There we go. And or the bony points, the hip pointers, right? And just feel that area of your pelvis. You could take your hand around posteriorly behind and feel that big wing of the ilium. And then as you press through one heel, feel how that side of the pelvis slips down and the other side sort of slips up. So this is really just a little bit of modeling, or this is walking essentially, right? So pressing one heel away and then the other heel away, as if we were walking. So the whole pelvis shifts as we go through this movement. Mm-hmm. Good. And then you can bend the right knee, take the sole of the right foot to the floor, and flare the right hip pointer up as you come across midline in a little bit of a twist. Arms could be relaxed out to the side. And then release that hip back down to the floor. Inhale, press into your right foot, peel your toes back towards your shins and glide yourself over to the left so the right leg comes across midline, and then you settle back down. And a few more times there. Now the hip pointer shifting up, your buttocks will come off the floor. And just a couple more times on this side. And then release, take left sole, left foot to the floor, right foot long. Same thing over here. As you inhale, you'll lift your left buttock off the floor. Keep the toes pulling back towards the shins, pressing into the inside edge of the left foot as you come across midline. Exhale, release everything back down. How about two more here? And then come back to center and grab your belt now and take your belt onto the soles of your feet. And we'll take the legs up in the air, and we'll go ahead and let's keep the arms bent. We don't get a lot of bicep work, the front of the arm. So as you hold the strap pretty firmly, don't wrap it around your hands if possible. Grab the strap and keep a little bend in the elbow so you're working your bicep. But the main focus here is in Supta. We're in Supta Dandasana, to find the little curve in your back. So you don't want your back into the floor here. Can you find a little anterior tilt in your pelvis so that the lower back is off the floor just enough to swipe a piece of cardboard or something underneath there? You'll feel the stretch in your hamstring. Now, depending on the tightness in your hamstrings, your legs might be a little further away, right? So find the position where you have your low back away from the floor, wherever that is for you. And then press your feet into the belt and pull back with the belt against your feet. And here you might play also with bringing more weight to the inner edge of your feet. So you kind of invert the feet and maybe go to the outer edge of your feet. So evert the feet as if you were going to put them into Baddha Konasana feet. And feel where that stimulates the hamstring, because it'll be a little different. And then come back to center. Mm-hmm. Great. And last couple breaths here. Again, really want to have this awareness that we don't have our low back collapsed into the floor, but we have a little bit of space between low back and floor. And then slip your left foot out, keep your right foot in, and now you can reach up towards the foot as high as possible on your belt. So right arm straight. Now, mm, lots of choices here. You can keep your left foot on the floor and just open up your right leg to as far as feels comfortable in your pelvis. If it feels okay and you don't really have any SI, sacroiliac issues, you could probably take your left leg long and then open up your right leg, Supta Padangusthasana, as far to the right as possible. Some of us will get it all the way down to the floor. Keep pulling your toes back towards your shins. You'll feel your inner leg muscles working. I have my left hand on my left hip pointer, just encouraging that hip to stay down. If you find that your hip lifts off the floor quite a bit, you might back off or rest your leg on a block. You take a couple of breaths here. And then inhale to come up to center and switch the strap to the left hand and just come into a big twist. So right leg comes across midline. And now with the strength of your core, can you draw your right side ribs towards the floor? So you're just trying to use the obliques, the strength of the core to draw the right side ribs down towards the floor. Bend through that top leg and bring your leg back up to center. And then just with the strap in the right hand, just pull your knee in towards your armpit and extend out. And just a little bit of vinyasa here through hip and knee. And then let the strap go and pull your knee into your chest, taking the front of your leg with both hands. And see if you can really let it nestle, just nestle in there, relaxing even in the hip flexor. And then a little bit of side to side sliding movement with your knee. There are so many structures around the pelvis, so many fascial structures, ligaments and tendons, to keep everything stable so that we can stand upright. And then we can release the right leg down to the floor, come back to the Tadasana, just find even standing again. So you can use the floor to really, really feel this. So back of the heels into the floor, touching the floor, and then your buttocks, parts of your legs will touch, and shoulder blades tucked under the back of your head against the floor. Great. Now we'll take the strap to the left foot. And once again, you have options here. If you do have SI pain a lot or anything going on with your sacroiliac joint, you could bend the right leg and take the sole of your foot to the floor and just slightly open the left leg out. If everything feels okay, you can come all the way out to the side as per your capacity with the right foot on the floor or the right leg straight. Pull the toes back towards the shins on the left leg. Engage the muscles, and you could encourage the hip to stay down by just taking your right hand to your right hip pointer. Feel the inner leg working and lengthening here on the left leg. We might do this standing up. And then you'll inhale, your left leg comes up and across midline, and now you're in a twist. Strap in the right hand. Draw your right hip under. So your pelvis is pretty stacked here, right? And then see if you can draw your left side ribs down towards the floor. Face is soft. Sweep that leg back up then. With your strap in the left hand, you can move through some flexion and extension at the hip and the knee. Like you're doing a little pumping action. You're pumping up your air mattress. And then at some point, just release the strap and pull your left knee into your chest and nestle in there. So find a kind of comfortable nestling. So we're kind of when we're in this position, we're kind of in a lunge, a low lunge, which we might do. You could do a little side to side movement with the knee or some circling. See if you can get a relaxed, even though the hip flexor is working with our hand pulling the leg in, can you kind of relax that hip flexor and keep everything else soft? And then release your left leg down to the floor. Toes pulled back towards shins, Tadasana once again. Great. And then we're going to take one block. You could bend through your knees here and take a couple of pelvic tilts if that feels good. But we'll take one block and we'll squeeze it between the upper inner thigh. And we'll take the other block into our hands. Just move my strap out of the way here. So let's bring the one block, the block between your hands right above the chest. Squeeze the block between your legs. Squeeze the block between your hands. And then just take the knees over to one side and the block to the opposite side. Not very far. Inhale back to center. Keep squeezing the block, knees to one side and hands to the opposite side. And back to center. And let's do that about, 4 to 6 more rounds. Let your breath and movement work together. And then bring the block behind your head as per your capacity. Keep squeezing the block between your knees and just a couple of times with the block behind your head and back. And then add the legs, pulling the legs away and back. Pulling the legs away. And now when you come back, can you bring the block in your hands beyond your knees so you're curled up a bit. And then open up, inhale. Keep squeezing the block between your legs and exhale. Block in your hand beyond your knees. Loving what is. Good, and then we'll let that go. Take the block up from between your legs. Take your feet as wide as your mat and just softly move knees back and forth, relieving any tension around the sacroiliac joint, inner thighs. You might even take just lift a few times through the pelvis, your whole hips up as you, not a super high bridge, just like a pelvic tilt with lift. Pelvic tilt with lift, there we go. Good. And then you can roll to one side or rock up. And take your blocks to the front of your mat. So set your blocks up to the front of your mat. And you can start with any setting, and you might change that later. And with your hands on the blocks and your knees underneath your hips, we'll take some cat cows here. And then the next time you press into the blocks and begin to round, just set your hips back to your heels in child's pose with the hands on the block stretched out in front. So you're not probably going to rest your forehead to the floor here. And then flip your hands so that your palms are up. See if you can get at least 8 of your fingernails into the block, if not 10. I certainly can't get my thumbs to the block, but you might be able to. So external rotation through the arms, and then turn your palms back to the block, down on the block, come back up to all fours, turn toes under and press hips back, downward facing dog. You might have to adjust your stance a little bit so the blocks don't slip away. And come up onto the toes and back down to the heels, or at least intend the heels to the floor. And then find that little anterior tilt in the pelvis. Rock forward and come to high plank. You might have to do a little block asana here, keeping them nice and even. See if you can get the middle of the back reaching towards the ceiling. And shoulders in front of the wrists here. You could play with this, how far forward that felt okay on your wrists, and then press yourself back, downward facing dog. Bring your right foot between the blocks and come into a low lunge. Spread through your collarbones here, reach the chest forward. Now draw the right hip back. Draw the right hip back. Really feel like you're drawing that right hip back. Then take right hand to right hip. And then you could stack in a twist. Stacking shoulders. Keep the back leg lifted. And release your right hand back to the block. Rock your hips back as your front leg begins to straighten. You can release it back to downward facing dog. Rock forward to Haidandasana. Now, can you line up the heels of your feet with the heels of your sitting bones? Set yourself back, downward facing dog, and then bring your left foot in between the blocks. Settle into your lunge. Now draw your left hip back. Left hand to your hip. You could stay here in the twist here, or you could stack your left arm over your right, left shoulder over your right shoulder. And release. Left hand back to the block. Straighten through your front leg as your hips shift you back. Bring your feet back, downward facing dog. Come forward onto your knees. Set your hips back to your heels. Turn your palms up. And come into child's pose with the palms up. Big external rotation here. See if this time maybe you can get all 8 fingernails, maybe 10 fingernails to the floor. Can that thumb open up just a little bit more? And then turn your hands back to the block, palms back to the blocks, set back up into a tabletop, turn toes under, press back, downward facing dog. This time we'll go left foot forward first between the blocks. And mostly that's so I can show you what we're going to do here. Draw the left hip back. And now turn your right foot so that you come into extended side angle. Now, you have both blocks, so you might have to set your block on the outside of your left foot to a different height. You have to play with that a little bit. Okay. And then once you're in that extended side angle, straighten through the front leg into Trikonasana. So we just came in, instead of coming in from standing, we came in from the lunge position. You could here now stack shoulders. And if you know that you generally are going to have the block at a higher height, you could set that up previously. So now turning, bending through the front leg and turning back foot again, come back into the lunge. Draw the chest forward, keep the back leg lifted, straightening through the front leg until your hips shift you back, downward facing dog. We'll bring the right foot forward. So here, if you know you want this block to be at a little higher height, go ahead and set it up now. And then turning the back foot, you'll come into extended side angle. Okay. And then just straighten the front leg. And now you're in Trikonasana. Draw your navel up towards the upper ribs, lengthening through your crown, and then stacking. You could stack the shoulders if you wanted to. And sometimes the work that we do just needs a little different approach. So I really like finding new ways to move into shapes and postures. Okay, so now we start to bend through the front knee and turn onto the back toes. Sweep the left hand down so we come back. Take your time setting the block back to the lowest setting. If you want to, come back to the lunge. As you straighten through the front leg, let the hips bring you back. Sweep your right foot back to your left foot. Downward facing dog. And come forward to High Dandasana, the high plank. You might have to do a little block asana there. And then can you just bend a little bit, coming a little bit into the arms. And press back up. And then walk your feet up to your hands. And now blocks can be in any position. So now what I'd like you to think about is lining up the heel of your ischial tuberosity, the heel of your pelvis, with the heels of your feet in the forward fold here. And it might take revisiting this too in front of a mirror, but really feeling for, and the blocks could, of course, any height. So if you want the blocks up a little higher, do that. See if that, can help you find that position with the legs. Great. And then wherever you are, wherever you have your blocks, you could have them on any height. Just separate your feet a little bit, okay? So you have a little bit of space between, they're about hip distance apart. And then start to bring the blocks back a little bit behind you. So blocks behind. So my image just went away, so Let me see what's going on here. There we go. Okay, I don't know what that was about. Definitely have some weather going on here. But bring the blocks back behind your toes. And then maybe even a little bit further, like back behind your heels. And then there we are. You can rest on the blocks for just a minute here and then bring the arms forward. Utkatasana. Good. And then your release will be that forward fold again. Again, you might have to bring the blocks back here. See if you can line the heels of your pelvis over the heels of your feet. Bring your blocks up to whatever height you need to. And then start to bend through the knees, set the hips back, bring the blocks even with your feet and maybe behind. You've got your weight in your heels. You could lift your toes here, right? And then keep that and bring the arms forward. Maybe you could come up a bit here now and bring the arms by the biceps. Get that external rotation in the arms. And then your release is going to be a forward fold. You could grab your blocks here and come into the fold. See if you can stack the heel of the pelvis over the heel of the foot. Let's go one more time. So bending through your knees and setting your hips back, setting the blocks back. Like you were going to sit down really in the chair, right? Counterbalance with the arms forward. Feel your hips working here. Really should feel the outside. So can you draw the outside of your hips in? Release will be a forward fold. You can start with a little bend in the legs, but see if you can get that anterior tilt in your pelvis, lining up the heels of the pelvis over the heels of the feet. Great, and then from here, just taking hands to thighs or hips, just set yourself up to standing. Good. We'll take the blocks, set up the blocks now, and we're going to use the blocks for our Vrksasana, for tree pose. So just begin by taking one foot. So challenge, if you have two pretty sturdy blocks, and you want to try this with a higher block setting, of course, the floor is always fine as well. What happens, this higher block, it's like when we go hiking, right? And you're taking a big step up. As I step up, I have to pull this standing leg in, right? To find my balance. And think I'm a little bit out of view there. I'll just do one. So 1, 2, or none. Taking one foot to the block. As you stand up, pull the standing leg hip in. Feel like you're squeezing your hips. So just take the other foot and just hover it beside as if you're in Tadasana. Find even standing here. You might even put your hands on your hip pointers and see if you're balanced. And you could do a little bit of movement around the pelvis, moving your leg forward, out to the side and behind. And you certainly can use any wall space for balance. And let's start with just foot on standing foot. Hands to heart. Trikonasana. Your ankle's working hard here. Maybe you could bring your free leg up against your calf. Maybe extending your branches up and swaying a little bit, or working with your gaze. whole body working here. Hips are working really hard here to keep you upright, to keep you in this wavering stance. If you fall out, just take a break, come back, start over. And that's also part of the work, isn't it? That we are constantly having probably to work on the same things in our bodies and with our mind, with our emotional states. Let's step down and shake out that standing leg. And we'll try the other side. And just begin with a good, firm spreading of the feet. As you stand up, suck that hip in. Stack your feet like you're in Tadasana. Feel for even standing and suck your hips in towards one another, like you're being, like you have a press, a drill, not a drill press, just like a press a vice press in your shop, right? Pressing the hips towards one another. And you could just rest foot on foot, hands to heart center. Any variation. Coming out, shaking out the standing legs. So sometimes the externals, right? I was riding my snowboard yesterday. I feel like I have pretty good balance. I'm a decent rider. Snow is heavy and wet, and just I was just getting tossed around. Body just trying to adjust to that. So we have these external conditions. Let's take a wide stance. In our lives that can throw us off balance, right? Great. Inhale and reach through the crown of your head. Then let's exhale and take a fold here. Now, can you, even though your heels are not underneath you, and again, you might need a block, can you line up the heel of your sit bones, your heel of your pelvis, your sitting bones, over the heels of your feet? Right? Even though the heels are wide, imagine they're right underneath you. So again, you might revisit this in front of a mirror. If you have a partner there, could kind of give a little gaze and say, yeah, you need to take your hips back or forward. And then come deeper into the fold, perhaps taking your forehead to the block in a little inversion. Gather the muscles to the bone, so keep the legs really working strongly here. And then inhale to a halfway lift. Heel toe the feet towards one another and drop into a squat. So squat can be with the block underneath and the sitting bones, or you can suspend, but keep your back in that same, that there's a little anterior tilt, so there's a little bit neutral towards anterior in the low back. Now we're going to come forward onto our hands and just rest the knees on the outside of the arms, and maybe pick up one foot and maybe pick up the other foot. And you can try both feet if you want. Keep the hips up a bit, and then set your heels back down. Come back to either sitting on your block or in your deep squat. So just a little prep for some hand balances. So come forward onto your hands, lifting your one foot, lifting your other foot. Notice if you feel better on one side or another, and that could be for lots of reasons. And then from this position, release the legs from the arms, and come back to a forward fold. You might grab a block here, line up the heels of your sit bones of your pelvis over the heels of your feet. And then pressing into your feet, hands to your hips, come up to standing. Find Tadasana. Can you line up the back of your sacrum with the back of your head and feel for your sitting bones lined up over your heels of your feet? Externally rotate the arms so the palms face forward. Great. And then release any effort here. We'll now go to the Garudasana, the eagle pose. And here you can use the block as well. We just use it in a little bit different way. So the block to one side of you. As you come into a bit of a squat, remember what we did previously, drop the hips back. You'll bring one leg over the other leg, and you can just rest your foot right there on the block. Feel like that vice, squeeze the hips in, and you can sink here. My left leg is on top of my right leg, so my left arm will go under my right arm, and I can just give myself a big hug here, or bring the backs of my hands together, or come all the way around and bring my palms together. Sitting a little deeper, squeezing hips in. Now, if you don't want the block, of course, you don't have to use the block. Good. Squeezing, holding. And then slowly unwinding. As you straighten up, you can unwind the legs and shake out standing leg. Loving what is. We'll love it on the other side. So lined up, block on the other side. And we come into that squat, wrapping opposite leg up and over, resting it on the block if you would like to. Takes a bit of the balance out, so you don't have to use it. But as you sit, squeeze the outer hips in. Now my right leg is on top, so right arm underneath, a big squeeze, or half a bind or full bind. Sitting into eagle pose, Garudasana. And then we'll unwind slowly, come up, take a little movement through your legs, maybe through the hips, unwinding a bit. And then come to the top of your mat in Tadasana. And inhale, the arms up overhead. And exhale, just fold through center. Now, hopefully you have your block somewhere handy. Find that same alignment of the heels of your pelvis over the heels of your foot. And if you have to have two blocks stacked, it's all good. All right. Hamstrings are probably about a 20-year project. Tight hamstrings. Good. And then you can release hands to the floor, step your feet back, downward facing dog. Pumping through your knees here. Don't have the blocks underneath your hands anymore. Back to something super familiar. Then we'll drop one forearm to the floor, the other forearm to the floor, and walk the feet forward in dolphin. Draw shoulder blades away from one another. Squeeze the muscles on your legs. You can always interlace the hands, so bringing more of a little triangular shape to the arms. Good, and then drop to your knees. Turn your palms up. And drop yourself back towards child's pose. Let the back spread open. And then you can bring the palms down to the floor and slide your hands back to your knees. Set your hips over to one side, feet to the other, and swing your legs around out into Dandasana. So instead of propping yourself up on something, you can move the fleshy part of your thighs out of the way. Start with your hands behind your back and find that same tilting action in the pelvis that we started with on the floor. So imagine that your back is on the floor and there's a little space between your back and the floor. And some of us will have to be way back here, and some of us can find it, and some of us can find it without putting our hands behind our back. So the heels of your pelvis, your sit bones, even on the floor. Now bring your toes back towards your shins. Squeeze your legs, so squeeze the muscle. Keep low ribs in. Reach through the crown of your head. Lots of work going on here, even though it looks like such a really simple posture. Lots going on. So keeping that little bit of arch in the back, can you hinge at the waist any amount? You're going to feel your hamstrings here. So just when you get a stop, then you can stop. You could also have your blocks out here in front just to keep that nice position of the low back. Maybe you can hinge a little bit more. Press your heels of your feet into the floor and draw your heels isometrically back towards your hips. And then you can fold a little deeper with each exhale if that's happening in your body today. Again, hamstring work is long-term work. Most of our stuff is, but hamstrings in particular, because they affect the overall posture so much. And then you can just walk yourself back up, and we'll slide forward, bring the soles of our feet to the floor, take our hands, pointing the fingers back, and press into reverse table. Then lower back down and bring your heels of your pelvis right to the floor, and then bring your feet together in Baddha Konasana. press your feet in towards one another. Totally fair game to have a couple of blocks on the knees. If you press your feet together and maybe just take your ankles with your hands, can you press, using your own functional mobility, press your knees down towards the floor. Now back of the head is lined up over the sacrum. So even standing, we're even standing on the heels of our pelvis. Great. And then we'll release the right leg long and bring the left leg over to the outside of the right leg. Sitting up nice and tall again. We're standing on our heels, right? And just take both hands to the left leg and bring that left leg in towards your chest. You could take a little twist in that direction to your left, the bent leg. And just a slow unwind and a little counter twist. And then left leg long, right leg to the outside of that leg. Both hands to the outside of the right knee and let the pelvis twist, then up through your spine. We feel a little tug on the outer right hip here even. Squeeze the muscles of the extended leg. And from this position, we're just going to take our hands behind, come right down to our back, slide the left foot up until you're in a figure four. And then just use your own functional mobility here to bring the knees into the chest. So don't grab anything. Just pull in as far as you can manage. Toes back towards shins. You feel the counter work in the outer right hip. Great. So can you just switch it in midair? Left knee, left ankle on top of right knee. And again, use your own functional mobility to pull your hips towards your chest. Great. Now, when you unwind, take legs up. Find Supta Dandasana again. Find Dandasana here. So the legs, you might have a nice 90-degree shape with your body. It might be, the angle might be quite a bit more obtuse so that you can find that gap between low back and floor. And find what is the place in your body. Good. Then we'll bend knees, bring knees slowly into your chest. Give yourself a squeeze here. Rock side to side or take a laughing baby. And gradually unwind, unfurl, bring everything down to the floor in final resting posture. Shavasana. Feel the integration of all of your work. Especially we did a few different approaches today to similar or familiar poses, shapes. Creatures of habit, sometimes we can be resistant to doing something a little different. And in your shavasana, there could be some slight movement here. I'm finding I want to do that. Press through the heels a little bit, a little side to side rocking. Just find your way to some relative stillness. Turn the corners of your mouth up slightly. Feel space through your smile, inner and outer. Through your eyes. Stay as long as you like. If you'd like to join me in a seat, take your time, rolling to one side. May the merit of our practice encourage all beings to unveil the hidden brilliance that lies within. Namaste.